The following clip is an excerpt from my book review and analysis of The Gulag Archipelago Volume 1 by Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn. Now here is a little biographical information about Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn that I think is worth knowing before watching. Aleksandr I. Solzhenitsyn was born in Kislovodsk, Russia on December 11, 1918. He earned a degree in mathematics and physics from Rostov University and studied literature through a correspondence course from the Moscow Institute of History, Philosophy, and Literature. A captain in the Soviet Army during World War II, he was arrested in 1945 for criticizing Stalin and the Soviet government in private letters. He was sentenced to 8 years of incarceration to be followed by perpetual internal exile, but was cleared of all charges in 1957 as part of Nikita Khrushchev's campaign of de-Stalinization. Solzhenitsyn vaulted from unknown schoolteacher to internationally famous writer in 1962 with the publication of his novella One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, which Khrushchev himself authorized. The writer's increasingly vocal opposition to the regime resulted in another arrest, a charge of treason, and expulsion from the USSR in 1974. For 18 years of his exile, he and his family lived in Vermont. In 1994, he returned to Russia, thus fulfilling his long-standing prediction. He died at his home in Moscow on August 3, 2008. Solzhenitsyn's major works include the novels In the First Circle and Cancer Ward, the memoirs The Oak and the Calf, and Invisible Allies, a cycle of historical novels with the series title The Red Wheel, and the monumental history of the Soviet prison system, the Gulag Archipelago, which Time magazine named the best nonfiction work of the 20th century. In 1970, Solzhenitsyn received the Nobel Prize in Literature. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I here present to you the clip that you actually wanted to watch whenever you clicked on this video. Alright, now ladies and gentlemen, we move on to Section 2 of this review and analysis, and Section 2 is called The Evil of Power, Politics, and Ideology. Power is a poison well known for thousands of years. If only no one were ever to acquire material power over others. But to the human being who has faith in some force that holds dominion over all of us, and who is therefore conscious of his own limitations, power is not necessarily fatal. For those, however, who are unaware of any higher sphere, it is a deadly poison. For them, there is no antidote. There's a lot in this passage to talk about, even though it's so short. When Solzhenitsyn says, "But to the human being who has faith in some force that holds dominion over all of us, and who is therefore conscious of his own limitations, power is not necessarily fatal," I think he is absolutely correct. Now, it is true that, religion has done some great evil in the world. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say religion, I would say religious adherents who are more fanatical about it. But there is something to say about religion and about the belief in God. It provides a check. Like when you think that God is watching you in your actions, it provides a check on your ego and your conscience. That's why in the book of Proverbs in the Bible it says, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The idea being that if you have humility before God, if you accept that you actually are not God, that you are not all-knowing, then you can actually become wise, because you're actually open to learning. And so, there are things, like, I think Solzhenitsyn is correct, like, there are things that I have not done specifically because I believe that God is watching me. There's a check on my conscience, there's a check on my behavior, and that is absent, as Solzhenitsyn points out, in people who do not believe in any higher sphere or are unaware of any higher sphere. To those people, as far as they're concerned, there's nothing to hold them back except for personal preference. Stalin did not believe in God. There was nothing to hold him back. There was no higher moral authority to say, "Hey, Stalin, you shouldn't starve millions of your own people." There was nothing. There was no transcendent moral authority that was binding to him. He was not worried about, an authority in the sky looking down on him. He was only worried about what he thought and about, who he wanted to kill next. There was no check on his conscience, and that's why I think, when you look at the 20th century, I think power, it if there's nothing to check it, if there's nothing to hold it back, if there's no power or no belief in a power to keep earthly power in check, then earthly power just goes nuts on people. People can't they can't handle it. You know, there's that old saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, I haven't read the great Russian novelist Dostoevsky, but I will say this, I have heard the famous quote, "Without God, all things are permissible." Yeah, I think that Solzhenitsyn would agree with that. Now this next passage I think has a lot of relevance to today, considering that America has become absolutely obsessed with political fanaticism. And Solzhenitsyn is not really a fan of politics. He doesn't really think of it as a very high, you know, a high profession. He kind of thinks that it's pretty ridiculous. I'll just read what he says here and we'll discuss. After all, politics is not even a science, but is an empirical area not susceptible to description by any mathematical apparatus. Furthermore, it is an area subject to human egotism and blind passion. This is exactly correct. And this passage in many ways builds off of the last passage concerning power. I think that the reason people have become so obsessed with politics in America and in many places is because they've forgotten that, you know, that higher sphere, that check on power. And power in our society has been exercised by some people who were not worthy of exercising that power. And so we're all focused on power. And instead of going to, you know, the ancient texts that have always guided us, we instead look to politics for the answers to the hole that, you know, religion once filled in our hearts, you might say. But, of course, as Solzhenitsyn says, it is an area subject to human egotism and blind passion. And so while, you know, politics is obviously necessary, you have to have, if you have a government, you're going to have politics. I think the political fanaticism that has taken place in particularly America is, you know, promulgated on, or rests upon human egotism and blind passion, because we're all looking for something to make sense of the powerful actions of powerful people who, you know, think that they're God. Now this next passage also kind of piggybacks off of the previous two passages, because of course it's a part of the same section. Duh. But this passage, I would like to discuss it more in the context of what people call the Great Reset. You know, this kind of theory that, you know, there are a whole bunch of rich people that are conspiring to, you know, completely restructure the world economy. I haven't looked into much of this Great Reset stuff. I know a lot of people have talked about it. But I do know that the World Economic Forum did put out a video, I believe it was in 2016 or maybe it was 2020, I don't know. But where they made a prediction that in 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy. And this passage from Solzhenitsyn, I think is, I think it tells the real story behind the whole you'll own nothing and be happy. In our country, the right to own private property was at one time just as effectively banished out in freedom too, and then those who banished it began to enjoy possessing things. The people that want us to own nothing want to own everything. Marxists do this all the time. And, you know, I mean, for a perfect example, there was that Black Lives Matter founder who has said on record, we are trained Marxists, about her other founders within, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement. She recently bought a, like, almost, it was like a $1.4 million house. It's very fascinating how Marxists, who are always like, we want to abolish private property, you know, they always end up, you know, enriching themselves with large amounts of private property that's very expensive. Because, of course, they benefited from capitalism. I just thought that was funny to bring up, because it is true. Like, within the Soviet Union, as Solzhenitsyn said, the people who wanted us to abolish private property took so much pleasure in owning all private property They take everything from you so that they can have everything. Perhaps, I don't want to read too much into the intentions of the World Economic Forum and some of these great reset people. Also, I don't know how much of the allegations against them are true. But whenever they say, in 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy, I've got to say, I do suspect that they'll probably own all of that stuff that we don't own anymore. And I don't know if we'll be all that happy about it. I could be wrong, but we'll see. We'll see. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this next passage may be the most important passage I go over in this entire video. The passage has to deal with something that has taken over the conscience of many Americans and just many people in many other countries worldwide. It is something, it's a virus of the mind, I would describe it. It's something that allows people to justify their actions no matter how heinous they are. What Solzhenitsyn says about this certain something, I think is absolutely true. And I think we should all, in unison, be against this certain something. Because this certain something will probably kill us all. Do you want to know what this certain something is, people? Okay, well, allow Solzhenitsyn, through my voice, to tell you. That was the strangest setup to a passage ever. I hope you enjoyed it, though. Anyways, let's read about that certain something. Something. Ideology. That is what gives evildoing its long-sought justification and gives the evildoer the necessary steadfastness and determination. That is the social theory which helps to make his acts seem good instead of bad in his own and others' eyes, so that he won't hear reproaches and curses, but will receive praise and honors. That was how the agents of the Inquisition fortified their wills, by invoking Christianity, the conquerors of foreign lands by extolling the grandeur of their motherland, the colonizers by civilization, the Nazis by race, and the Jacobins early and late by equality, brotherhood, and the happiness of future generations. Thanks to ideology, the 20th century was fated to experience evil-doing on a scale calculated in the millions. This cannot be denied, nor passed over, nor suppressed. How, then, do we dare insist that evildoers do not exist? And who was it that destroyed these millions? Without evildoers, there would have been no archipelago. I think every single thing that Solzhenitsyn said in that is absolutely correct. I think ideology is the thing that brings about genocide. I mean, he made reference to Christianity in there, and as I understand it, Solzhenitsyn became a Christian. But it is true that Christianity, there are some sects of Christianity that have a very strict ideology that's somewhat based on Christianity, but not really, that allows them to justify using Christianity to do horrible, evil, heinous things. And so whenever people say, oh, Christianity did this to all these other people, it was really more ideology, the ideologies that people build around Christianity. And same thing for Islam. Now, I haven't read the Quran, so I can't really speak too, authoritatively on it. But as I understand it, most Muslims are totally against this, crusading violence and terrorism and all that sort of thing. But ideology, there is an ideology amongst, the more fanatic Muslims that seeks to use Islam as an excuse to murder and pillage and conquer the world if they can. And I see ideology in many ways taking place in America with our political systems. And I think it's really, really dangerous, and I think we all need to abandon this ideology stuff, this us versus them mentality, this I'm right because I'm right mentality. I mean, look, on the right, in 2020, there was a portion of the right, by no means everybody, but certainly there was a portion of the right that seemed to be under the impression that Donald Trump was some sort of supernatural warrior sent by God to save America. It wasn't a huge portion, but I did see the memes of people, putting Trump with a halo around his head, people talking about him as if he was the savior of the United States. And I see, the people that, kind of promulgated this very bizarre cultic affection for Trump, as they were trying to replace what religion was once held in their lives. They were looking for like a savior, a new messiah, so to speak. And I think it's very dangerous. We saw the results of that with the January 6th Capitol riot. And it wasn't good. It was very ugly. And I think a lot of this was motivated by ideology. Again, like a lot of those people that rioted at the Capitol, a lot of them probably came from some sort of Christian background, but they clearly didn't really know a whole lot about Christianity, or only read about the parts of Christianity that confirmed their preconceived ideology of what the world is. Because they clearly didn't read about, all the evil of pride, greed, and a loose tongue, things that, Trump was certainly guilty of. They probably more, didn't read most of the book, or just constructed a whole ideology that somehow, made what they were doing okay. But of course it wasn't okay. Likewise, on the political left in America, there is this hashtag woke stuff, where they simultaneously, these people, preach love and tolerance, and then turn around and try to ruin you if you disagree with them on any LGBTQ plus, initiative. It's like, in the name of diversity, conform. This is what these people are like. I mean, and I see this as an attempt to graft a new dogma onto society, a dogma that is just purely an ideology. I mean, that's really what dogma is in a lot of ways. Like, people, they often make reference to dogma when they talk about religion, and there obviously is dogma in religion, but there are all these stories that contextualize its meaning and, how it should be enforced. But when you don't have all these stories, as the woke people have, then you just have pure dogma, pure ideology, and it ends up with everybody trying to cancel one another. And we're going to talk about cancel culture, but here in a minute, because it's due to ideology. And I just want people to quit this obsession of I'm right and you're wrong, and if you disagree, then oh shit, you better run, you motherfucker. Now, people need to stop this. They need to stop this, like, immediately, because ideology will be our end, as it has been the end of millions upon millions of people.